Hi, I'm Niblet99. You might know me on the AhoyWorld Servers as Andy, and today I want to talk a little bit about UAVs and how to use them on the current existence of the AhoyWorld Servers. So there's a lot to cover in this one. There are bugs we will come across, and there are plenty of things to play with. First I want to talk about is the tools at your disposal. The very first thing you need, which you should spawn with by default, is a UAV terminal, which obviously will be the NATO variant as we're playing the NATO forces. This will give us the scroll menu option to go for open UAV terminal, where we can connect to all our birds. Right now all my birds are landed and I have a UAV drone, just a little data that's going to altitude, so we won't be waiting too long. Firstly, I'm going to talk about the Greyhawks and the Sentinels for a bit. We're going to get those airborne, and then what we're talking about, so while those are getting up to altitude, we are going to be talking about everything else and hopefully come back to them in a little while. So the very first thing we're going to do is open the UAV terminal, and we are going to connect to our Greyhawk CAS. So these are the variants which have 2 GBUs on board. The usually would have a laser designator, but these have been removed on the AhoyWorld server. So if you throttle up, sometimes the drone won't move. It might take a good 20 seconds or so for them to respond. So as soon as we've got this on the runway, we can just release controls and it will take off. And I'm going to shift click on the map to give it a waypoint over this bay. I'm going to give it a type. I want it to loiter, so it just flies in a circle. I'm going to give it a 1.5 kilometer range, just a fairly loose circle, and I'm going to give it the behaviour of never fire because I want to be doing all the firing myself. And I missed one thing, so I'm quickly going to go back into the driver and set it to manual fire on the scroll menu. And now we've done that, I can give it the altitude command that I wanted, which is to bring it up to a very high altitude of 2 kilometers. The reason I did the change to manual fire before giving it the altitude change is once you have gone into the driver's seat of a UAV, it will suddenly ignore any altitude changes you've given it and will stay at its current altitude, which is why I had to give it that afterwards. And while we're waiting for that to get up to altitude, it's going to take some time. We're just going to get the second one off the ground. Let's see if this one bugs out. Yeah, so this one's bugged out. What you see is I can leave it with the engine running, put the flaps down, and then it's just put the flaps up, which means it just reset, and now I suddenly have control of it. That can take up to 20 seconds for it to reset. So while I'm taxiing on the runway, I'm just going to go for manual fire, release the UAV, let's get it airborne. Same again, we're going to give it in this time we're going to give it a long path. We're going to send it over here with shift click to reset all waypoints to where you're looking. I'm going to give it just a standard move order. I'm going to say again behave near never fire because I want to be doing all of these attacks myself, an altitude of 2000, and then I'm going to control click a following waypoint in which case I'm going to get it to loiter in that area. There's no real reason for doing it when the area is this close. I just wanted to demonstrate how you would assign multiple waypoints should you wish to. By then it will already be at altitude, so I can just give it a standard loiter without having to give it any other details. And then if you own the Jets DLC, you also have access to the UCAV Sentinel, which will probably also need to reset, which it does. So I'm just going to disconnect from that for a few seconds while that's going. I also wish to get a second data airborne, and I want to get these static emplacements built. So if I go into my truck, I have all of the UAV bags you might need. So we have the UAV AR2 data, which is used for spotting and for laser designation. We have the autonomous GMG, which is something I'd not played with until recently, but is a lot of fun. It's a fairly powerful grenade launcher. We also have the same in machine gun variant, and we have the UAV bag AL6, which is a bit of an odd one. It's a delivery drone. you can essentially fit in around about 12 magazines of ammunition into it, so it's not got a large capacity. But in a pinch, if someone needs explosives at a radio tower or just needs a few magazines to top them up, it's an option for sending out resources. But anyway, so first we're going to build the autonomous GMG turret. It's a good idea to have spares of one of the items, so I've gone for spares of the folded tripod because there is a cleanup script on the server which can delete whatever you put on the ground if you get unlucky with the timing. So I'm not going to be overlooking the AO for this one because I want to be able to do this video without worrying about getting shot. But it would be nice if we have some buildings we can destroy, so I'm just going to build it here. So I'm going to open my inventory and drop the tripod on the ground. It doesn't matter which bag you do first, as long as one of them is on the ground. Then I'm going to come back and grab my GMG. Hopefully my bag will still be there when I get to it. And on the scroll menu, when I point at it, I get assemble the emplacement. So I now have my autonomous GMG. Again, I'm going to do the same with HMG, sorry, with the MG. And then finally we'll get the other two drones built. I should probably park the vehicle closer, but oh well. Hindsight is a wonderful thing. So that's our two emplacements. I want to build the AR2 data, which, as mentioned before, is our spotting drone. And I want to build the AL6, which is the Pelican, which comes from the Laws of War DLC. This one really isn't essential. As I said, it's just a delivery drone, but if you have Laws of War, you may as well use it. If you haven't, it's not worth getting Laws of War just for it. So now I have all these drones built, I can also scroll to them and I could disassemble them to turn them back into backpacks. I can go straight to connect terminal to UAV if I want to take control of that drone. And you'll see on my MFD displays I can bring up the drone's cam on either side I choose. If I use the rotate function on them, I can change it between the vision types on the camera. So now I have my data connected. I'm just going to get this one flying. So what you need to know with the data is there is another bug to watch out for here, which is it will default fly at an altitude of 50 meters and it will fly fine, bug free. The moment you give it an altitude change command, all bets are off as to how bug free your experience will be. It is very common that a drone will just stop responding to commands and just start drifting in various directions, just rotating endlessly. That's just the way of things. As mentioned, the Pelican drone, if I go into the inventory of it, I can fit in some medical kits. So it comes standard with 2 first aid kits. If I'd built the medical version of the drone, it's exactly the same, except for it, by default it comes with more first aid kits in and a medical kit inside, which is of limited use, to be honest. But let's get this flying as well. Open UAV terminal. I'm just going to I'm going to connect to it. I'm just going to shift click it, and it will take off and fly away. So now I have all my emplacements built, I'm going to start with the static emplacements. So in fact, actually let's get the UCAV Sentinel flying first. So I open my UAV terminal, my UCAV should have fixed now so that I can actually control this and taxi forwards when I start the engine. There we go. Unlike the Data, this has a lot more thrust. So you will probably find that you only need a couple of percent of throttle to get it to taxi. You have fold wings options, which will auto unfold if you taxi more than about 40 kilometers an hour. I'm going to taxi up to the steam catapult here. I'm going to put my flaps down. I'm going to hold space over the steam cat to do launch while putting my throttle up to maximum. And you can see that it catapults us off the end. I can bring my gear up, and we can fly up quite aggressively in altitude. You see 30 degrees, and this is absolutely fine for climbing altitude at a rapid rate. This also will allow you to project power over the map very quickly. So again, let's set this on a loiter pattern. You will notice that the ranges are much higher in this due to the speed of the craft. Also, the reason I'm launching this is you'll notice that the speed comes into play with how you have to do bombing in this from altitude. So I'm going to set my range to 2.5 kilometers. Behavior always to never fire, and my altitude again to 2,000 meters. What you'll find is that enemy Tigris and the like typically engage at around about 1.5 kilometers. So at 2 kilometers you are usually fairly okay. Sometimes they will fire at you still. A lot of the times they'll miss or you'll take trivial damage, but you are by and large fairly okay. So back to the static emplacements. So we have our HMG and we have our GMG. So again, if I just open my terminal, I should be able to find them in the list here. So if I go for the GMG, control gunner, what you'll find is the map key doesn't work in these. But we have this emplacement. If it sees an enemy, it will actually auto fire at them, so be wary of that. They might use up all your ammunition. But these work the same as any other gun in a vehicle. You can press N to cycle between the different thermal visions and night visions and regular visions, and you will find that it's actually quite potent. So I can press my ranging button, which by default is T, to range on that house down there, and you can see that the gun is re-ranged to 1500 meters. Not sure if that's actually in the effective range of this, but we'll try it. Typically about 3 to 5 rounds with this is enough to collapse a building. So you can see we're just landing short there, so I should not be talking when it's so loud, but there we go, we fired a few more rounds and that should probably take the building down if we were a bit more accurate with this. We are firing at the extreme ranges with this gun, and it can fire out quite far. There's 2 kilometers, but with all of these the accuracy is a little bit off, and you can see we've collapsed that building there, and hopefully taken out any infantry within. On the scroll menu, obviously the V key to eject from a vehicle doesn't work, we actually have to release. So, there should be one more shack down there. Yeah, there we go. That's probably the wrong building, but you get the idea. The HMG is exactly the same. Again, it will auto fire. It is just a straightforward 50 cal. So if I just connect to it, same deal. Control gunner. I have exactly the same optics options, exactly the same ranging mechanic. Oh, 4 spare reloads of ammunition and 100 rounds in the barrel. You can't really grumble, it's pretty potent. So those said, we'll now just very quickly talk about the Pelican. We've pretty much covered this already. It's a delivery drone. So if we go into the UI, we have this fairly new kind of UI. It's a very responsive drone with a lot of lift capacity to it, so it handles much better than the data. It's a little bit quicker as well, but obviously it has no turret viewing on it, it has nothing but just the main pilot view. We don't even have night vision. Best way to use this is to find your target on the map that you want to deliver something to, right click them and choose follow unit at 0. The drone will then automatically fly over to them, navigating the terrain and adding and lowering its altitude as required to get to the target. It will try and stay at altitude of 50 meters above terrain, and you can see it just homes in quite nicely, and it will pretty much go directly over my head. You see it's kind of stopped very close to me. Let's just take control of the driver. I forgot to do one thing, which is if I release UAV controls, I want to turn autonomous off so that once landed it doesn't take off again. So the guys actually have time to get the gear out. You can see it's very easy to just move up to your target and land roughly near them. These all use the helicopter controls just as anything else. Here, if I want to disassemble it once it's done, I can just disassemble it rather than flying it back, let the backpack despawn and get cleaned up by the cleanup script. So next I want to talk about lasing. Obviously when you see an enemy vehicle, yeah, there are two ways of killing it. Ideally on the AhoyWorld servers you should be always getting called in for an airstrike. If there's only a few people on the server, then it's less of a issue, but ideally you should always be called in, especially when it's busy. So if I look at the AO, I just use my laser designator, I can see there is people running around there. So what you notice is right now my view is perfectly steady. This is a rarity. Normally you've been running around quite a bit, your stamina's bar's gone down, your view will shake quite a lot. If you go prone, you will see that you have different levels of proneness, where if at the image at the top right I have no dotted line under it, which means I'm getting no stabilization from the terrain. As I aim downwards to get close to the terrain, I get this dotted line appearing under me, which is adding stabilization. So ideally, if lasing, you want to be prone or resting on an object, and you want to be on a surface which is roughly parallel with the direction the enemy is in. So like this I can, sorry, forgive me, my bindings are a little bit messed up from playing another game. But with this, I can just literally right click the mouse button to turn my laser on. What you will see is a little red cross in the middle, and you will see a laser symbol at the top of the viewfinder telling me the laser is on. And at the top right of the screen it also says on instead of off. So I would need to aim at something and keep that laze close to them and visible to the incoming guided bomb. So the best thing to laze is always going to be the top of a vehicle, because then no matter which direction the drone is coming in from, it can see the laze because it's on the top. If you're lasing from the side or the back, or you're not confident that you can keep that laze on the roof, always tell the UAV guy which direction you are lasing from, so that they can send in their drones from an appropriate vector. Other thing which is worth mentioning is that since the tanks DLC, all of the bombs were changed to lock on after launch, invalidating all of the previous UAV bombing videos, so it has changed quite considerably. What that means, if there are multiple lasers active in the AO, your bomb could pick any one of them to follow. And given that random people tend to have a habit of leaving lasers on say a strider, or looking at friends through field glasses and leaving the laser on the laser designator without realizing, and even enemy air assets will laze friendly troops, so make sure if there is more than one laser in the AO, get the others switched off if you can, and make sure you're very careful about the glide path of where your bomb's likely to go and which laser it's likely to track. And ideally, if there are multiple lasers, you probably shouldn't even be dropping the bomb, which is frustrating, but that is the way it is. So if you are unable to get friendly person to laser on the ground, but someone has still called for gas, you are within the rules of this server reasonably allowed by most admins to engage. So to do this, as I mentioned, the lasers have been removed from the Greyhawks, so we're going to be using a darter. So here's a dart I prepared earlier, which I gave a height command of 2,000 meters, and what you see, it's actually capped out at about 1,200. So what I'm going to do is take control of this. As you can see, my view range is quite considerably increased from the default. If you can only see 1,500 meters, you need to do that change by both going to escape menu at configure, video, and upping these visibility for overall an object. I would recommend a bare minimum of 7 kilometers if you are doing UAV work, and also you need to up the amount that the server sends you as well, because your game will pick the lowest of the two. So if you go onto the map, you can go to the settings, and here we have view distance, and we can change view distance settings here. So we have different settings for whether you're on foot or in a car, and whether you're in the air. So those are well worth doing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to switch on my data to the turret controls. So the laser was turned on. So let's have a look at the AO. I think all the enemy armor has been taken down. So there are just men left, which is not ideal for us, but we can work with that. So what I'm going to do is, this drone is going to be a bit wobbly because it's right at the height limit, so I'm going to bring that down a bit. They seem to stabilize a bit once you get them below 1 kilometer high, but if you bring them too low, then they tend to get shot. Let's bring it down a little bit more. Now, I should mention that the map setting option is very specific to the AhoyWorld servers. You will not get that on vanilla. There is a default server config in most parts which needs to be updated. So I should really be identifying my targets here, but given there's only one other guy on the server and I know that's not him, I'm going to try and aim at a guy. I'm going to control, if I can get it, it's a bit fiddly with these little ones at this kind of range. I'm going to try and control T to lock my camera on it. There we go, we've got him. So what you'll see is I'm not giving any inputs right now, and the camera is actually tracking that guy. So I'm going to turn my laser on, and I'm going to switch to my Greyhawk, which is orbiting nearby at altitude. And we're going to come in full throttle, and we can already see the laser mark there. If I press T to target, we lock on to it as something we want to keep visible, but there is no guarantee that the bomb will go after that. So there is, because we're so high, we can't actually see part of the UI, which is another crosshair which is actually off the bottom. So I'm going to bring up the radar, which shows the target we have locked, and set that to 8 kilometers range. When I get to about halfway inside that innermost ring on the target, I should be, at this altitude, I should be about the right place to drop a bomb. So as we come in, I'm going to dive, and you will see the extra indicator come up for where the bomb is going to glide. I'm going to drop the bomb kind of close to the laser, and I'm just going to pull up, get rid of some of this altitude, so get rid of some of the speed to get altitude back. I'm going to release the UAV controls. I'm going to connect back to the data and go to the turret, so that while the bomb is falling, I can guide in its launch on lays. And I was a bit slow there because I was actually talking. But you can see the bomb fell where the laser is locked. I can unlock the laser, but that was pretty much a kill on the guys. So with the Greyhawks, it's a little bit messy. So I'm just going to find one more guy. So there is the AO. There's a house I want to blow up. I'm going to control T it to lock it. In fact, that one's got AI as it. Just check on the map that those are indeed AI. So if I shift click Morningwood to see a pin, I can see that is actually Morningwood, our ally. So let's not fire at him. Let's go for this further building. We will of course keep an eye on that building by putting a pin on it. I believe was, if I do it on the map rather, I believe it was this building. To stop my drone messing around, I'm going to turn autonomous on it off, and what you'll find is it just falls into hover. We see that my map pin is actually directly on that building, so that is the right one. This time we're going to use the UCAV, which if I connect it you'll find is flying a lot faster. And what this means is that we can actually see the bomb drop indicator just on the bottom of the screen there at this altitude and this kind of speed. So hopefully I can see my laser, which I can. I'm just going to up the radar on this one, which is actually longer. It goes to 16 kilometers instead of 8. And you can see as we come up to the drop that I can just drop my bomb there. And because these bombs are flying faster, because this drone is flying much faster, you will find that this is actually much better for hitting moving vehicles. So while we're going there, we're just going to check our guys not at that building, and we should see that the bomb has indeed exploded and destroyed that building. So that is using the UAVs to destroy stuff. Now, final things I want to talk about is landing. So I'm going to get control of my UAV. You can of course land these yourself, but the easy way is to give them a waypoint on the center of the airfield. Change it to type land, and I'm actually going to up the ante on this one. I'm going to give it multiple UAVs at the same land so you can see how they interact with each other on the runway, and I'm going to tell this one to land at the USS Freedom, as it is the UCAV which is designed to launch off it. Now again, there is a bit of a bug here. The UCAV has a success rate on of landing on a carrier of, I would say, around about 80%. It's pretty good. It's better than most people, but it's not guaranteed. So if you are good at landing, I would do it yourself. Bear in mind there's no real ILS or anything. It is a very much hands-on eyeball only approach. What you can see is these drones are flying around. They've gone straight over the centre of the runway, and they've now triggered the land mode there. So you can see they are dropping altitude rapidly. That one's down to 90 meters. This one is down to 900 and falling. So what I'm going to do is connect to this one. You control the gunner so you can see how it flies in. So we have something pretty to look at. You can see as this goes, not a lot because we are nose down right now. I will speed up this part of the video just so we get done with it. I look behind, we'll see the other UAV taxiing behind us. And it will taxi just the end of the runway. We'll do a little U-turn, and the other drone will stop just behind us without touching. So this first one is actually clear, just kind of still on the runway, which can cause interference for other pilots. So when you do have them down, I would advise letting the pilot sort them out. So I would advise getting them off the runway as soon as possible. If you do not let them come to a complete stop like this, then they are still in automated mode, which means that as soon as you release them, the game will take control of them. So I'm just moving into the pilot seat on this. I'm going to taxi it down to the end of the runway. Yeah, when you release them, if they've not come to full stop, they will actually take off again. And that includes if you've run them over a rearming pad. So the rearm stations on this map are we have Air Service 1 and 2. These do all planes and UAVs, they're shared between the two. So I'm just going to taxi over to 1 and just hit the air brake, just bring the speed down. If you try and turn at over 40 kilometers an hour, you are likely to tip the UAV. But that is now on the rearm pad. That would typically take about 5 to 10 minutes to rearm. I believe it's currently set to 5 minutes. But it has varied in the past, so again I'm just going to bring the other UAV in while we wait for that Sentinel to land and use up the other rearm pad and upset any jet pilots trying to use this runway. If there is a jet pilot using this runway at the time, it's best to agree between you who uses which pad. I would say the one I've just come on to on the east side of the runway is more convenient for UAVs and a lot harder for planes. As I mentioned, the UAVs have a tendency to start moving if you didn't let them come to a complete stop as soon as they finish this rearm. And what that means is if my UAVs are pointing towards the runway, which is the way I've parked them coming in from behind the spots, they will actually taxi onto the runway, go down it and take off. If I'd come all the way along the runway and then turned off onto the servicing pads, what they would actually do is, facing the other way, is they would taxi straight ahead, go into the trees and get stuck. So always land your UAVs on the pads facing towards the runway, it will help you a lot. Again, if I come to see if the UCAV, it looks like it has failed to launch, which is a shame. So I will describe the area. In fact, I will cut to another section at the end of the video just to show you where the servicing pad is for the UAV. So here is the carrier. What you see is we have the 3 trap wires here that you have to catch with the tail hook if you are landing the UCAV Sentinel manually. Make sure you put both gear and use the scroll menu to put the tail hook down if you are attempting it yourself. And over here, as you taxi onwards towards the catapult end of the carrier, there is this little marked off area on the ground with a couple of crates and some missiles and so on. If you move the UAV into this area, it will run the rearming, refueling, repairing script. So once you've taxied here, again it will take a few minutes and then it will be available again for launch. So thank you for watching the video. I hope this has been of use, and I wish you all a lovely day and good luck with the UAVs. Thank you very much. Good night.